welcome to Health Issues. I'm your host, Chris Sylvain, and we're here to talk about battered women. Women that are getting beat, women that are getting threatened and killed and destroyed, and specifically about women. And we'll talk about that in here. I'm talking about women that are getting beat by their husbands, boyfriends, and we'll deal with child abuse later, but that fits right along with the entire project. We have a great guest from the Blueprint for Safety Project, Miss Katie Bambrick Rodriguez. Thank you, Miss Rodriguez.
I'm very honored to be here. Thank you.
No, we're honored to have you. She is a summa cum laude graduate, Tulane University, law grad, lawyer, and been doing work. Tell us a little bit about yourself, all the way spent time in Sierra Leone and so forth.
So I've been working on domestic violence and sexual assault issues for some time now. I have some experience working as a human rights monitor in Sierra Leone. So I spent some time there collecting information about what does sexual assault and intimate partner violence look like in Sierra Leone after they had a 10-year civil war, and they needed to start gathering information after the civil war and re-engaging with this issue of intimate partner violence. So I did that. I've also worked as a detention officer in a juvenile facility, and so I got to see how family violence affects children and the issues that those children have. And then I'm an attorney, and I worked as the clinical fellow at the Tulane Law School Domestic Violence Clinic. So I worked with victims there, and I also did some training programs and sort of policy initiatives with the clinic to do some high impact work that was really going to affect a large number of victims.
Awesome. Right person, right subject. Let's deal with how big this thing is. There are women who are going to jail for domestic violence. There are women, this is happening, where women are going to jail for domestic violence, for women that have been abused for years. All right? There's a case where women's going to jail for so-called hitting her husband when she had been getting beat severely for years. We have where they're spending time in jail, but the issue is, what kind of society are we living in where this could even happen? What's going on?
Well, I'm glad that you brought that issue up because it's a big issue here in New Orleans specifically. Nationally, the rate of women arrested for violent acts against their partner, it's about 6%. Here in New Orleans, it's about 17 to 20%, so we know we're high. So what that tells us is that probably some of these women who are getting arrested are actually the victims in this situation. And state law gives police officers a little bit of guidance on how to make determinations about who to arrest when they come onto a scene and they get conflicting information. Because as you can imagine, as a police officer, it actually is really difficult work. You go out there and one person is saying, he hit me, and the other person is saying, I never touched her, we're in a fight, and she said, if you don't do what I want, then, I'm going to tell him that, then, you're going to call the police on you and say, you hit me, and it's difficult for police to suss out when two people are telling conflicting stories where the truth is. But state law gives police officers some guidance, and they call it the predominant aggressor assessment. And basically, it's some criteria that police officers must consider as they're trying to do their investigative work. And it also requires that police officers make an investigation so they don't throw their hands up and say, I don't know who's telling the truth. We can't arrest anyone. And on the other hand, gives them a skill set that says, here are the things that you consider. Past history of violence, effect on the children. Here are some things that you consider to try and figure out, am I going to accidentally arrest the victim? So we really need to connect our police officers with this knowledge that is in our state law and make sure that all the police policies and everything the police department is doing is bringing victim safety to the heart of these arrest decisions. And the project that I'm currently working on, the Blueprint for Safety, is all about how do we structure every criminal justice system intervention from 911 all the way through to probation and parole under one policy. How do we make victim safety the center of every single piece of institutional interaction? And some of that is not about, what your intention is or whether you care about domestic violence. It's literally just giving institutions the correct tools to put victim safety at the heart of all their interventions.
Okay, but women are getting beat. Mm-hmm. It's I think everybody can agree that in New Orleans, all right, and nationwide, the problem is out of hand. The amount of women that are getting beat, the amount of women that are getting beat, the amount of women that are getting hit by men, and if the system doesn't recognize, to me this is just common sense, all right? A man and a woman's in a fight, arrest a man. I mean, unless you tell me, how are we not realizing that men beat women? It's rare that women, she can kick, scream, and do everything she wants, all right? Yeah. But the domestic violence issue is men on women. As you said, 94% of the time nationwide, and the 20% that we're dealing with, this thing is a farce. So if we arresting women, you know what I mean? Then what is it telling to all the rest of the women? No, let him beat you, because if you call the police, he's going to obviously lie, and you're going to get arrested. This is nuts. I don't even understand it. So, maybe I'm wrong. Tell me what's going on.
You're absolutely right. It's a gendered problem, right? So,
yeah, statistically.
Right.
This is, so how is the law flipping it around? How can a police officer with good common sense?
Mm-hmm. Well, and where I'm coming from with my project is that we want to assume that we haven't made our institutions perfect yet. So we want to assume that every police officer wants to do a good job on these cases, and that maybe they're not being given policies or tools that are helping them make the correct arrest decisions in these cases. So we want to look at things like one difference between incidences of violence that are isolated and incidences of violence that are part of this coercive control, part of this pattern of domestic violence that is really the gendered thing that's happening here. We know that, 1/3, 1/4 to 1/3 of women experience domestic violence at some point in their life. And
repeat that.
1/4.
25 to 33% of women experience domestic violence.
Yeah.
So that's bigger than I thought.
And the saddest part about that is that for most of those women, it is not going to be one incidence of violence. It's going to be a pattern that lasts over time.
How many men hit one time? If they hit, that's what they do.
Right. Well, and that's the problem that we need to address. Is it's the problem, and it's also the clue in the criminal justice system. Because we're talking about people who over time are going to have a pattern of aggressive behavior, possible assaults to different partners, possibly a call history with this individual person, other forms of systematic manipulation of this person. So there is information there that maybe if we are connecting, making better connections to that information and teaching officers how to use it, that they can start to feel comfortable using that information to make an assessment of the situation that more closely resembles that person's life.
Yeah, but how do we get to this point where, where a so-called professional, a police officer, and let alone judges, because I'm watching the judge literally saying, oh, this doesn't even make sense, but stay away from him. To me, that's criminal.
Yeah.
When I say that's criminal, now the girl is getting beat. She's been in jail and it's wrong. You know this. Now, as any professional, then which systems do we have to prevent this from continuing on? And this person literally, then these girls, and I'm saying not a person, I'm saying society now, in the incarceration rate we have with males, and the issues that we have, the unemployment rate. So literally, for these girls, the daughters, the nieces, that they have no protection. I don't see it. I mean, in the Family Justice Center, and I'm calling for other, trying to help women, it took 10 phone calls, 5 directly, all right? 5 serious phone calls to get to you guys, and nobody else could help. Legal Aid was giving crazy information. We had all kind of groups saying, well, they're going to call you back. Now, wait a minute. A woman is being abused. They need help. You know what I mean? Do we have to have $500 to get a psychiatrist? I mean, the system has failed as far as I'm concerned. You help me out. I'm not beating on you. You guys are doing a great job. But to me, it's not enough.
Yeah, well, first things first, let's go ahead and take a second to give out the crisis line number 24/7. You're in New Orleans, you give us a call, 504-866-9554.
866-9554. 504. So the women that are getting beat, threatened, when you feel your life is in danger, or you don't have to feel your life is in danger. Wait, before we even move, let's stop there. Let's define violence. A man doesn't have to hit a woman before she feels, she shouldn't wait till she got hit. Am I right?
Well, I think that you're touching on a really important point, which was that when the domestic violence movement started, we really wanted to latch onto the violence. People react to that. The criminal justice system reacts to that incident of violence. But through interviews with battered women, a really intelligent man, Dr. Evan Stark, started feeling like these women are telling us something different, right? They're telling us, you know, the worst part was not, you know, when he broke my jaw or when I ended up in traction or any of these horrific injuries. The worst part was how he controlled my life. And for the longest time, we as advocates thought that was metaphorical. You know, they're just trying to hammer home the point. But what his work says is, let's take them at their work. Let's believe what they say, and let's look at everything else that they say is the worst part. So that's economic control. Here's $5 for the week, feed the kids on it, and if you ask for more, you know the consequences. That's isolation from your family. That's isolation from your social network.
You can't see your parents. You can't see anybody. Don't talk to anybody. That type of controlling, dominant.
Yeah. And so Dr. Stark said, let's shift the focus from the violent incident, requiring that violent incident, towards this pattern of entrapment.
Right.
Because that is what makes the problem long term, and that is what creates other negative health effects for these women that go beyond just the incident of violence.
Okay.
And so I agree with you that I think that if there's a woman out there who feels like she can identify with some parts of that description of coercive control, you call the crisis line, and just there's someone there to talk to you. You know, you don't have to define yourself as a victim of domestic violence. You may just hear, geez, I'm not allowed to access our checking account or see my family either, and I'm starting to feel like that might not be right. You know, there's counselors there who can talk to you about those issues, and you can make decisions about your own safety going forward.
But see, that's just the point. Okay, you gave the crisis line, okay? But that's the real, with family violence, domestic violence, people are talking about, women are talking about the man they love.
Yeah.
You know, because when I talked about it before, when I worked at the prison, you know, all day long, hey, you know, why are you taking my husband? You know what I mean? Well, you called. No, I just wanted him to stop hitting me. I didn't want you to bring him to jail. So it's complicated. It's always muddy. It's always a mess. There has to be some people that they can call to talk to, counseling, where they can work this thing through. Now, what happens when they call that line?
They'd be connected with a hotline worker who would take information about their case and make referrals to other services in the community.
That's where I have a problem at.
Well, Crescent House, the crisis line actually is a part of Catholic Charities, which is a part of the Family Justice Center. So we're actually in a really great place as compared to a lot of other communities nationwide, because our services are integrated in a way that other communities' services are not integrated. The Blueprint Project will be the same way for the criminal justice system. That by the end of the project, we're hoping 911 knows what probation is doing, so that you don't bounce from agency to agency with just your referral slip and nobody's talking to anyone else.
Yeah, but that's my concern is that the issue is 4 o'clock in the morning, woman's scared, she's getting beat. Can she call somebody that can talk to her? Can she get a real counselor? You know, like after Katrina, they had real counselors you can call. There was money available. This idea, hey, I'm going to call you back. And I tell you, quite frankly, I asked for a call back, and I get no call back.
Yeah, they're going to connect her to whatever she needs at that point if she has some immediate needs in terms of talking to someone who's qualified to talk to her about the issues that she's experiencing. They'll also be able to offer her some immediate shelter if she has that.
I'm going to stop you right now, only because I applaud the Family Justice Center. It's the best, it's the greatest that I've seen out here. I'm excited about what's going on. But again, I have a problem with, we have, 350,000 people, 1 million people in the metropolitan area, all right? You're one public-private agency. To me, it's like the little kid, you know what I mean? you're just not big enough. You're not strong enough to handle 33% of the women here in the city. You know what I mean? That we know that's going to get beat over a period of time. You're talking about, let's look at the numbers. You're talking about 300-something thousand people that over a period of time, we know this beatings are going on, and we know what's happening. We know this. Like I said, it don't take Einstein to figure this out. And we have one public-private agency that you can't tell me you have enough. To me, system-wide, it's a joke.
I mean, the dimensions of the problem are staggering. Almost 50% of ER visits for women who are injured are for domestic violence-related injuries.
Repeat that. Half the women who come to the ER
for an injury
is
a domestic violence.
The husband
injury.
beat them. Pretty much 95% the husband beat them.
Yeah.
The boyfriend, the whatever, and it's 90, and still we're dealing with 96% women. Am I right? Around 95, over 90, right?
Well, what we're dealing with is a rate that is what we would expect from the arrest rates. That's the statistics I think you're citing, that 94% of the people nationwide that are arrested for domestic violence are men.
Right, and the issue then is that, and I'm going to tell you my point, hey, throw stones at the show if you want, throw it at your TV, you can't hit me. But the thing of it is that I'm saying for people that are saying, oh, it's equal, no, it's not equal, men beat women, all right? 90% to me, that's it. It drives you when people try and place this equal. No, it's not. Men beat women. Rarely do you have women beat men, and a man, I don't care how little he is, and you're talking about, we could be a big old 6-foot woman and a little bitty man, oh man, suck it up and move on. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that to the extreme, all right, but 90% for the system needs to be balanced. Where these judges, how can a judge, how can a police officer come in here and saying, let me hear both sides of the story? I don't want to hear that. That doesn't even make sense to me when we know the man, I don't care what people say, he's a stronger vessel. I'm a little bitty dude. I'm 125 pounds, 30 pounds. But the point of it is, but I'm a man. Men beat women, and men need to own up to what they're doing. And society needs to go to these men. I'm preaching to the choir. This is your area. But why is the law, you as a lawyer, where do we miss it? Where do we miss it?
But the law is adapting to try and close that gap, right? Because we know that there are certain questions that the criminal justice system is not getting to that would give us more information that other police departments have been able to get to. So right. It is not our general policy, or it's not a police policy in general. Police departments function best for isolated incidents. That's what they're trained to do. They go out and they hear a story about what happened today, and they're not trained to say, tell me about the history of violence. Tell me about the worst incidents of violence you've ever experienced. Right. Tell me about the pattern of violence. Is it getting better over time? Is it getting worse over time? What can you tell me about these things? And what we find through the Blueprint for Safety and other communities who are implementing similar changes is that police officers, when they start to get this information, it really changes their response and what the police report looks like. And then going forward, it changes the information the DA has. It changes the information the bail officers have if they have this information about the history. And it's sort of just making this institutional shift for domestic violence cases to acknowledge it's a patterned crime that occurs over time. It doesn't necessitate the same response as one isolated incident the other types of crimes officers are used to responding to.
So your project is helping to train police officers or create the systems that police officers get better training so they will go in just using some kind of common sense type.
It's even better than training, right? Because I think one mistake that we make sometimes is that bad responses to domestic violence must be a result of the systems not caring about domestic violence or just not knowing about domestic violence. But the Blueprint for Safety approach is really great. It's an assessment approach that's been used in other projects all over the country. And it's about going in and figuring out how institutions function. And a great story that I was told when I started my work was we went to a community and we asked, okay, Organization A, how are you connected to Organization B? And they said, well, the domestic violence victim comes in and we interview them and we get their consent and we put, this information about them in this locked file, and Organization B comes over and gets them, and it gives them all these services, and they're really just very connected to victim services. You go to Organization B and you say, geez, Organization B, how are you connected to Organization A? And they say, geez, John over at Organization A really cared about domestic violence, but he left. And they don't even care anymore. They don't even bring us the forms anymore.
That's what I heard when I was calling around.
And it can be an institutional problem. So what you may find is that it's really just a problem of policy. John left, and there was no institutional policy directing the next worker. You must send this form over to this other organization. You must connect with this other organization. So we want to look at those policies that organize people to do their work and close the gap between the work institutions are doing and victim safety.
Your program is great, but the issue is that, to me, from a policy standpoint, that would be the state health department, the city health department, or whoever. Who's responsible for these women that, until your program gets up and going, all right, and what type of funding that's needed to institutionalize this and make it happen? Who's been dropping the ball? How is this by? Has a newspaper, and I harp on newspapers all day long because I think we cannot have a democracy without freedom of the press. And who's publicizing these women that are getting beat? Who's helping the women out here? Because right now, you know what I mean? I see what you're saying and I see where you're going, but right now there are women that are getting beat as we're on this program. There's women that were beat 2 weeks ago and know they're about to get beat. And other than calling the police to have this man arrested, and guess what? Who trusts the police these days?
Yeah.
You call him to get him arrested. Like you said, part of your program, he's going to get out and come back. He's going to kill me once I do that. How can I run? I have no money. He's controlling my money. One more thing. For only time I was on the jury trial, it was a woman, again, shot her husband. Like this other young lady told me, a young girl, 19 years old, shot her husband. But he had been beating her for years. But she was in jail, happened to get off, all right? But it was a hard vote. She could have been in jail for years. These women are going to jail for years for shooting and stabbing men that is really self-defense, but the system doesn't allow it, I need to stop. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There's a lot there. You're not going to find any argument with me. The dimensions of this problem are so big, no one can stand on the sidelines, right? Nobody can say this isn't a major public health crisis, right? No one can say that. Nobody can say this isn't a major economic crisis. We know you're losing something like $5 billion a year because of lost wages, hospital visits, time off work that battered women have to spend. We know that, the NOPD received 10,000 calls for service for domestic violence cases last year.
10,000?
10,000. So we know that the dimensions of this problem are just off the chart. You won't get any argument from me. Yes, it's so big that no organization, no public health organization, no city, no criminal justice system can stand aside and say, we'll just let somebody else handle it. And, my project is a city project, and a lot of the other organizations in the city are public-private partnerships. So we see the city really stepping up to come to realize the dimensions of this problem and all the ways in which addressing it can benefit the city.
But for now, we just cry.
Unfortunately, the response for domestic violence is not perfect, and victims' experiences really do show us that there are just major gaps in the system. And, we work to do what we can with what resources that we have, but I think that you're right in saying, in really latching on to the scale of the problem and really asking that everybody in the community, city, private partnership, everybody engaged to sort of address these huge issues.
All right, some steps that families can take. Let's talk to some of the families, and as you know, I'm a believer in men standing up and men making it happen. I believe that, let's deal with this issue. If a man hits a woman and she says, I don't want to press charges, I believe it's up to the family, uncle, daddy, brother, to come in and say, I don't care if she don't want to press charges. You committed a crime against the state of Louisiana. You committed a crime against this family. Society should say, man, you're going to jail.
That's the structure of the criminal justice system right now. But one difficulty is that we have to get give the police the tools they need and the training they need to collect enough information to pursue evidence-based prosecution on these cases, and have enough cooperation from a victim to actually be able to access that evidence. So if you're going to have the state go forward on charges and the victim is not willing to cooperate to testify, you're going to need some other evidence
You
for
won't
that
get other
case.
evidence. She's
could
the only
be.
one you have.
It could
And she's
be.
going to put makeup on, and she's going to go to work, and she's embarrassed. Sometimes the kids will say,
And there's a balance there too, right? Because we want to step in and rescue these women, but their realities are actually incredibly complex. And we know that leaving a batterer is one of the most dangerous times for a battered woman. So, she may be making a calculated decision. The time is not right now to leave this relationship, or because of what my intentions are with my children and raising my children, and I don't feel able to leave at this moment. I feel that pressing charges would be dangerous to me at this moment.
of course
So
it
I
is, because
feel
he's
like-
going to kill her.
So I feel like we have to, in some ways, work with women and trust their experiences and their knowledge of their partner, but make them aware, and I hope this program will help do that, that there's a number of services out there, and when you're making your decisions about your own safety and your own ability to leave and your own assessment of when the time is best for you to make that move, if that's what you feel is appropriate for your family, we have a whole range of services available to you to help you do
What
that.
can we do where when women call, they don't have to wait for somebody to call them back?
Well, if they call the crisis line, they can call anytime.
I know, but I know they're going to have an intake worker, but where somebody can really address this issue and walk them all the way through.
But that intake worker is going to be able to give them a lot of information about the next steps they need to take, and in some of those steps, connecting with shelter might be things that need to be addressed immediately. But some of those steps will just be information that they have going forward. Do you need to know that you have an attorney, or do you need an attorney for a divorce? Do you need an attorney for a protective order? Do your children need some help? Just connecting with them about
30 seconds. If I'm a woman who comes in and I call a crisis line, give me that number again.
866-9554.
All right. How does that peace bond process work, real quick?
So to get a protective order, you can connect with Project SAVE, and that's a free attorney. It's free to anybody of any income, or you can go to the civil court, and there's a woman there who can help you get
Chris
one.
Sylvain, health issues. This is nuts. We got to protect the women, and we're going to put this thing on the website, healthissues2010.org. But no, let's call your senator, call everybody. We need more resources on this problem. Police officers is men hitting women. Get that in your head. Have a good day. Thank you.